I'd like to talk about something that has put me in an area of great controversy. It is something that I found has really upset a lot of musicians. And the area is that I believe that a metronome will not give you good time at all. I'd like to see if I can explain it and make sense to you about this. A metronome is a click. Music is not about click time, and learning music has not been about equal time interpretation of rhythm. Learning music has been about playing and learning out of time. To begin, in academia, when you're learning an exercise, if I'm playing an exercise and I don't know the notes, I can't do that in time. Because eventually I'll be out of time and I won't be able to get a flow. Music has always been about learning it out of time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. See, it's about the subdivisional interpretation of these notes and taking the time to learn it. Why would anyone want to learn music that they don't know and play it in time? In fact, to simplify, you can't, I can't, John Richardson doing the camera work here can't. None of us can play anything that we don't know. You don't learn with a metronome because a metronome puts the click and the time before the information you have. How does one explain that the entire Latin community, just about, I mean there's always one exception and I don't know who that is, but just about the entire Latin music community, Central and South America, the entire continent of South America, how does one explain all these musicians playing in an agreed upon, organically agreed upon time feel with an organically agreed upon quarter note, and none of these musicians ever used a metronome to find that time within themselves? How does one explain this? How does one explain that the entire history of rock and roll, the entire history since 1950 up until today, is based upon a music and an agreed upon pulse, and none of these musicians ever used a metronome? No rock musician, just about, ever used a metronome to define the internal sense of time. How does one explain that? How does one explain the history of symphony orchestras where conductors subdivide music that is not 16th or 8th note music like Bach? Because people always use that click as an exercise type of music, but music is not always about that. Music is also about and if you have music that breathes, how does one explain that the whole symphony orchestra, the history of that, and all classical music, piano music, just about to a man, never used a metronome in order to play that music? Why are you encouraged to use it? Because we are in an era now where education of music is flawed. And this is the thing I think that gets me maybe into trouble with people, but I've never been too shy to say what I believe is the truth. How does one explain even the line dancing? What's that song that everyone does? You know, the chicken dance. How do all these people in a club all dance the same tempo and clap the same song? How does people go da 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 da? Hey, John, do me a favor. I have a cameraman here, and we did not work this out. Clap your hands if you know this tune, okay? Da 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 da. 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 Okay. Now, it's a funny demo, but John Richardson, this fine gentleman behind the camera here, I just pulled him into the video without any planning. And how did John know exactly how to clap that song with me? And I assume it came through the microphone. The proof is that the time has been internal, and he knows the song. And if he didn't know the song and didn't understand the requirements of the song, he was never going to play it in time. Ladies and gentlemen, the metronome does not help you. In most cases, in fact, will hinder you and destroy your sense of time, which is an eternal event. Destroy. Let me even edit that. It's going to mess with it. Now, on the other side of the coin. Gary Burton, the great vibist, the great, great jazz musician, we were friends and we wrote an email the other day, and he gave me permission to include this, because I want to include this, that Gary used a metronome as a young man because he felt he was rushing his time. And he said he used a metronome in order to, you know, pull him back. A metronome in this case was a drum machine. It was a drummer. He didn't have a live drummer there. And Gary, even at that young age, was a master. He was a master, vibist, musician, capable, world-class musician at that time who rushed and used the click to remind him to pull back on that time. So the metronome is a tool. If you're a developing musician and your teacher says, take this home and use a metronome, in my opinion, your teacher is doing you a disservice. Anybody that emphasizes a metronome while you're learning is doing you a disservice. And John Richardson just proved that. Now I'll do something with John that he doesn't know, okay? And let's see if you can't clap, boy, we're gonna clap in like Mission Impossible, okay? Like, okay, clap it in 6/8. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, why aren't you doing it? See, he's just sitting on the chair behind the camera giggling, saying, what's Jeff doing to me? He can't clap bop, 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 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because he didn't work it out. So if he didn't work it out, how can he play in time something he doesn't know? Do you know the Mission Impossible in 5/8? No? Bop, 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 bop. All right, do you know take 5? Clap tape 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, perfect. This is unrehearsed. This is just something I wanted to do with somebody who did not prepare for this event. If John, as an example, as a gentleman behind a camera, can do these things in music that he's aware of, you as musicians can do the same thing.